Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to my new video where we are going to go over 5 tips that every single Karthus player needs to know. Now, if you're new to the channel, my name is Lolfit. I do educational channels, do guide videos, I do tip videos, I do streams, and a bunch of other stuff like that. And I'm also extremely interactive with my audience, so if you have any questions, hit me up in the comments down below, or you can join the Discord where you can send me some direct messages and we can do a little bit of live chat. Also, always adding, if you want to add me on your friends list, I can always add anyone that wants to join our 5v5 customs when I do my streams. I just go down my friends list and invite anyone that wants to join if that interests you at all. So without further ado, let's jump right into this video. Now, the reason why I wanted to do this is because Karthus is amazing in the current meta right now with his amazing scaling, his ease of execution, and his rather unique kit where people don't really understand the damage thresholds at different levels because of his low play rate. That's going to wrap up the introduction. I am going to go into the 5 tips now. If you have any tips, I'd love to hear those in the comments down below. I usually pin my favorite set of tips or suggestions that a viewer writes down there, so please let me know what your guys' thoughts are. I'm always really open to feedback and critique with my videos. So now we got the whole rant fit out of the way. Let's get into the tips. Alright, let's jump into the first tip. Now I want to go over just something that's a little bit basic. Maybe not too many people know about it in low elo, but it's something you really should get to practicing as much as possible, and that is kind of the spacing and utilizing your Q sweet spot. So with the Q, it has a rather long range and it has a little bit of a detonation time. So if you know that someone's playing very aggressive in the lane and looking to crowd Karthus and jump on top of him, for example Talon or Fizz or Zed, what you want to do when you see them running at you is throw Qs behind you and move. When they're moving forward towards you, you move back because you want to maintain that sweet spot. If they're moving away from you, you take a step forward. It's a little bit like you just think about it like a dance, and I think that this will really help you out just in your kiting potential. So just going over it again, just another quick example, just get really used to your Q. Maybe go into a practice tool like I am right now and just get used to kind of auto spacing people like a Caitlyn would do, where she autos from her max distance and backs up if they're moving forward, or moves forward if you are moving back, and just keeping yourself at that sweet spot is going to allow you the maximum amount of damage with the most amount of safety available for Karthus with his Q distance. Yeah, that will wrap up tip number 1. Alright, now I'm going to jump into number 2. Now, one thing I want you guys to think about when you are playing Karthus is the absolute just power that is so underrated in Karthus's kit, and that is the reduce magic resist. Now, this is applied to everyone's damage. It's just reducing the base magic resist of the enemy team. So if you have a very heavy AP team, Karthus can be a great pick for you when you are going into ranks. Now, how we can utilize the W the best is usually just by putting it in choke points. It's really great to do it when someone is engaging on you. Here, I'll give you an example here. Maybe a Malphite ults in on me right here, or Malphite ults in right here on an ally. I can throw a W because I know that their enemy team has committed. They either have to leave their Malphite to just get destroyed and give up a free kill, or they have to walk through that W. And when they're walking through that W through your team, if they're being the aggressors, they're going to be slowed with minimal magic resist due to the W shred, and you're going to be able to get some easy Qs because they either have to run forwards at your team or do no damage and run backwards. So this is how we zone with long range control mages. A little bit similar to the first tip, but it just has a little bit of an added caveat of the W. And that will wrap up tip number 2 for Karthus. Alright, and for tip number 3, I just wanted to go over a quick caveat with the different build paths, rune paths, and the item differences on what you should be doing when you are playing Karthus. Now, if you go to probuilds.net right now and check out just the current feed of what pros are playing right now, it is a very large consensus that you should be doing Dark Harvest primary rune and then doing the Precision Tree secondary, and this will provide you with a lot of scaling and a decent amount of damage in an easy way. The reason why Dark Harvest is so effective on Karthus is just due to his ult. It's very easy to proc it on enemies from a large distance away. And then also you see a lot more prevalence of people taking it into the jungle now, because it can kind of provide lane assistance when the jungler isn't even there, and provides a little bit easier of a laning phase and gives you a decent amount of CSing. Now, my personal favorites with this is just a little bit more defensive than some people. I think with the Taste of Blood giving you a bit of lane, if you're taking Karthus into lane, giving you a little bit of healing, and then Eyeball Collection. I go Ravenous Hunter. You can also go Ultimate Hunter. There's a bunch of different things you can go in this setup. It is just down to personal preference. Don't let someone tell you, hey, this is the absolute best, you need to be using this all the time, because in the late game, the Ultimate Hunter just kind of falls off a bit, because usually the cooldown is right about where you need it, because there's going to be just one big team fight and then it's decided, and there aren't any fights for a long time. So the secondary, you can go Presence of Mind. There's a couple different things you can do. You can do Triumph. You can do just a whole gamut of things in the precision tree. But my two favorite are just the Presence of Mind for the mana and the ultimate cooldown reduction for the earlier game, because the cooldowns are the longest in the earlier game. And then Last Stand gives you an insane amount of damage, because in your passive form, you are getting the max amount of damage percentage increased on this. Now, with the item builds, if you're just doing a regular lane build, you have to kind of understand how the game is going. Do you have enough time to scale? Do you have enough time to run things like tier? Or do you really need, like in the current meta right now, do you need as much damage as possible right now? And that is when things like Ludens come into play, things like Morellos come into play, things like Void Staffs. All these are a little bit game dependent, and really look to assess the situation before you buy your items, because Karthus is really just kind of a damage machine, and the best, just bridging yourself from that early mid game into the late game where you can carry very heavily just with your huge ult damage is going to be a key a lot of the times. And also understanding if you're behind in kills, if you're ahead in kills, if the enemy team is taking a bunch of objectives, or if they're kind of just putting around, just getting kills and then backing. There's a bunch of different situations, and I want you guys to do a critical analysis on how your recent match history look like. Hey, maybe I shouldn't have gone for such a scaling build when we were so far behind. Maybe I just needed just instant power of Ludens or something like that. I needed the instant power, the spell pen power of the Morellos, and I should have built it there. So really try and do that. And if you have any questions for me on the item builds, I am happy to help you out. Alright, I'm going to go over a couple matchups for this tip number 4. What we're going to be looking at are a couple meta champions that I think Karthus can do really well, and that you should keep as kind of a pocket pick. Particularly, we're going to go over the mid lane right now. I could go over the jungle, but I think the mid lane is a little bit more dependent on your matchups, with Lissandra coming in and just being a huge play rate right now in the pro play. As the pro play continues, you're going to start seeing a lot more Lissandra in your solo queue games, and Karthus right now has just an insane win rate against Lissandra at 57%, because it isn't the roughest lane, and he outscales Lissandra quite hard. So keep in mind. Now, when you go into counters, a lot of the time when you are playing a champion that is rarely played, for example like Karthus, you get the added benefit of being able to beat them over the head with the experience you have in the matchup. So I'm not saying never pick Karthus into something like a Zillion. If you have more experience in that matchup, Karthus can do quite well. It just really is dependent on your experience with the champion. This should just be a general guideline. Karthus might have a little bit of a rough time with Kassadin, Vel'Koz, Jace, Echo. Usually people that can attack him a little bit in the early game outside of Kassadin just might have a little bit of an advantage in scaling. Once he hits level 16, he just kind of goes a little bit crazy, and then he gets the magic damage reduction. So just going down the list, there are quite a few champions that can attack Karthus in lane, so you should be cognizant of this. I would recommend, if you are not a Karthus one trick, to just develop a safe blind pick for the mid lane, and then just kind of keep Karthus as a safe pocket pick, as he isn't really the hardest to execute. You can kind of pull him out in niche situations where he is required, and some of the best spots would be against things that are not not really too meta, like Ryze, Fiora, Swain, Azir, Lulu, Lissandra, Renekton, Nico, Akali, Aurelia, Corki, Aurelion Sol, Malphite, Zoe, Kled, all have extremely good win rates against these champions. So always look to abuse Karthus, as he is a pretty rare champion, very rarely banned out. And yeah, that will wrap up tip number 4. Alright, now jumping into the final tip for Karthus, I just want to talk a little bit about how Karthus plays out in the game and where his strengths are that you can look to abuse. Now, the one thing I really want to hammer home with you guys is his ability to CS. It's extremely easy with the isolated Q damage and with the E damage giving you a lot of AoE. And what also happens when you have a lot of AoE damage on a mage is you're able to push the lane in quite quickly. And how you take advantage of that dead time when the minions are under tower are to look for enemy jungle camps that you can clear very easily because you are Karthus, or you can look to even take some of your own jungler's farm if he is just screwing around and not doing it and you feel like you can carry with the extra added resources. So always look to scale as hard as possible, and the way you do that is by getting a shitload of gold, and obviously kills help, but if you can just really work on increasing your CS, I think you're going to see a great bump to your current elo, because he is one of the hardest scaling champions in the game, ending up with like 700 or 800 damage on the ults in the late game. Now with this play style of just kind of push roam, it kind of seems weird for a control mage. It's usually reserved for people like Talon or like a Nocturne mid that just clears everything super quickly and then roams. Just look to be a little bit careful and cognizant, because you are squishy. You do not have the getaway potential as something like a Talon does, so be mindful with wards. And then also in that dead time after you've pushed the wave in, warding will be very beneficial in the enemy's jungle, and some good spots if you're kind of roaming around the bot lane. A ward right here would be very good, because it would spot out these two. A ward right here, a ward right here. This ward is very rarely cleared. This ward is very rarely cleared if you have a control ward, and just trying to get as much information as possible. Another great ward would be right here, spotting out these two camps, so you have a good eye on what the jungler is. And then also sometimes the jungler has, if they have a very low health clear, like they don't have the healthiest of clears, you can look to take advantage of that with an ultimate, and they're like, oh shit, how did that guy even know I was low health in the jungle and he just ulted me? So really look to grab a couple free kills through warding and through pushing out the wave and getting as much CS as possible. That will wrap up this video, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe. If you have any questions for me, I'm always extremely I try and be extremely interactive with you guys and help as much as possible. You can join the Discord if you want to have a live chat, or just come by on one of the streams, hit the bell notification button on the video, and just ask me some questions. Yeah, that will wrap up the video. You guys take it easy.